Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering Atletico Madrid drawing with Espanyol 0-0. We'll talk about the transfer deadline coming up. Speak about transfers. We'll discuss this new Champions League format that is set to start this season with the draw coming up tomorrow. We'll talk about the Chiesa joining Liverpool, the signing for Liverpool. And then make sure you stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my reaction to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. If you've got a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes the show great, and we thrive on your energy and insight. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We have to start off though with Atletico Madrid. They have drawn with Espanyol today, 0-0. 0-0 in a disappointing result for Atletico Madrid. Their second disappointing result of this La Liga campaign, as they are so far in their first 3 matches have a total of 1 win and 2 draws. They had that impressive performance this weekend, being able to defeat Girona team that had a really good season last season. They were able to defeat them 3-0 in sort of clinical fashion, behind goals from Griezmann, Llorente, and Koke. But today they finished stalemate, just as they did in their opening game of their La Liga campaign, as they finished with that tie 2-2 with Villarreal in a crazy first half sort of display from those teams. It finished 2-2. And I have to say, in this game, Atletico Madrid in that first half, they played Espanyol out of the park. They had a good possession. They played with a high level energy, high level efficiency, and they looked very at it. They looked like an attacking power horse that was able to dominate the game in terms of being able to create chances. And not surprisingly, in the fact that they're doing that against Espanyol, a team that's one of the more weaker teams in La Liga, a team that's expected to be in the round of the relegation battle, trying to stay up. This is an Espanyol team that I'm trying to see where they. This is an Espanyol team that's newly promoted up this season, and they're gonna be in a battle to, stay up in La Liga. They started off the first 2 games with losses to Valladolid and Real Sociedad, and this is the first point that they've earned this season, and they did it away at the Metropolitano, which is which makes this even worse a result for Atletico Madrid. Now, going back in that first half, completely dominated the game, created multiple opportunities with their with players getting in behind, making runs. You had Sorlos, he had a few opportunities, being sort of that target man, sort of number 9, that presence up there. I think there was one great opportunity they had was Rodrigo de Ball. He played in the ball behind Samuel Lino that was making a run from midfield. And in my opinion, Samuel Lino makes a big mistake. He decides to go for a goal and he hits the post. But if you were just to look up and notice, there was I forgot, I don't know whether it was Griezmann or Julian Alvarez, but there was an Atletico Madrid that was there, and it would have been that he could have slid it to, that would have made it an easy tap in into an empty net. Instead, he decides to go for himself, doesn't really have the presence of mind to look up in that sort of situation. He's only looking at goal, and he strikes the post, and that's a big miss that essentially ended up costing them the game, because it would have been hard if Atletico Madrid was able to get that goal, because that goal was early enough in the game. It would have forced Espanyol to open up, and I think Atletico Madrid, with the quality that they had in terms of possession and play, I think they would have been able to get the second, but that doesn't get through, and then it's just continuing on to be a struggle to get that moment in the back of the net. And then in the first half, that was in the first half, and then the second half, it took them a while to get loaded. Closer to the end of the game, they started creating more opportunities, but that first 20-25 minutes was very stalemate. And I see it on the broadcast that I was watching on the post-game show. They were saying that the substitutions, taking out Sorlos, taking out Julian Alvarez, messed with the momentum of the game. And I have to agree with that, because look, despite Atletico Madrid not being able to get the ball into the back of the net, there was no problems in terms of their approach, in terms of the performance. The performance was really good. They were very lively. They were creating a lot of opportunities. They just needed that moment to come to get it into the back of the net. I didn't see the sense of panic that came from Diego Simeone needed at that moment to make those, drastic substitutions that completely changed, sort of the rhythm of the game for Atletico, which we could see on the pitch in terms of the performance. Those first 20-25 minutes, it was pretty unnecessary, and it was in my opinion, a blunder by Diego Simeone, because it was substitution that was not needed. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Yes, they didn't get the goal, but they played some really good football, and it's a bad result. It's a really bad result for Atletico Madrid, because you're Atletico Madrid. You're out here battling with this new team that you have. You bring in Conor Gallagher, you bring in Sorlas, you bring in Julian Alvarez. You're battling in terms of wanting to be up there in La Liga, wanting to potentially challenge for La Liga, competing with the likes of Real Madrid and even Barcelona, who started off 3-3. And, if you're a team like Atletico Madrid, these are the sort of games going up against a newly promoted side in Espanyol at home, with the atmosphere and how electric that crowd was, because it was an electric atmosphere. To not get the win is very disappointing, and it's a bad result at the end of the day. It is a bad result. Going back to it though, reading the statistics, it showed Atletico Madrid, they were the more forward-going team. They were the team going more at it. When you look at 25 shots for Atletico Madrid to 8 shots for Espanyol, 7 shots on target for Atletico Madrid to 1 shot on target for Espanyol, 63% possession for Atletico Madrid to 37% for Espanyol. They just couldn't find it back of the net. And it's disappointing. With Julian Alvarez being subbed out, that's interesting there too, because Julian Alvarez, he is that sort of the talisman for Atletico Madrid. Now at this point, with what he's done, with the quality he has, he's going to be the guy that's going to be relied upon Atletico Madrid when they're going up against these big time teams in the Champions League or even in La Liga, to make that moment out of nothing. He is the player with the most quality, and he is the best. He's the player on the team that has the biggest capabilities of being able to make a play out of nothing right now. Him and Griezmann. And to sub him out as early as you subbed him out, as Diego Simeone subbed him out, is something that should be questioned on. In my opinion, it is something to be questioned on. But here's the bigger story for Atletico Madrid. This is so many years now that they've, we've thought, okay, they've signed this player, they signed that player. It's time for them to really compete with Barcelona and Real Madrid, and to put up, those sort of performances. We know what we usually associate when it comes to Diego Simeone, Atletico Madrid, in terms of being defensive, very defensive, pragmatic. But now we're expecting we've expected for a while now a more forward going, expansive team that's really going to be able to dominate games, especially against weaker opposition, and hence they start competing tighter with Barcelona, with Real Madrid. But year after year, we're really expecting just that bit more. We see some good signs from Atletico in preseason early on in terms of a good set of attacking play, attacking dominance, being able to control the game with the ball, really suffocating teams. But then as the season goes on, and you start getting tunnel vision, players start getting tunnel vision, Diego Simeone starts getting tunnel vision, and they start playing some of these tougher opposition, and the pressure starts mounting, and some players go down with injuries, or the confidence goes a little bit more, then they resort to their style of play, to what Diego Simeone is comfortable with, putting 11 men on the ball, behind the ball, making it a strictly transition game, and making allowing the other team to have the ball and forcing them to break down this really low, tight block that's unpenetrable. And look, I'm not one of those people that really mind that sort of football. I think every football, every sort of style of play, every sort of tactics, different ways of going about it, I think they all have the beauty, and I really despise the people that disrespect this sort of style of play in terms of playing a defensive, style the way, because I respect it. I respect the sort of, the way Diego Simeone wants to win a football game. I respect it a lot. But at the end of the day, you do need a little bit of balance, and you do need to look a little bit more threatening in transition. Now, the problem with that, today, that's not what happened. Today, Atletico Madrid, they dominated the game. They controlled the game, especially in that first half. They just didn't get the goal. But again, when you're talking about Atletico Madrid and in terms of them competing, you have to foreshadow this. As far as this game, is massive points lost, because if you want to compete with Real Madrid, you want to compete for La Liga, you got to take care of these teams. You got to take care of Espanyol at home. This is one of the most easiest games that you're going to get in this campaign. So yeah, it's a bad result for Atletico Madrid. But then now they gotta move on. They play, I believe they play Athletic Club this Saturday, which was part of the reason why they didn't really go with a full set, sort of starting 11. You had Griezmann on the bench, you had Marcus Llorente on the bench, you had Conor Gallagher on the bench, which I'm interested to see when he's gonna make his, not debut. Is it gonna? Yeah, when did he make his debut yet? Actually, I do not know, because I did not watch the Girona game. Yeah, he did. Where he makes his debut start, though. He hasn't started a game for Atletico Madrid. Will that come against Athletic Club? They rested a few players today. Looking ahead to that Athletic Club game, that game being at the San Mamés Stadium, a difficult stadium to be in. It's going to be an exciting game, and it's going to be a very, very important game for Atletico Madrid, because they need to build some sort of momentum going forward into the season. Yeah, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, though, we'll discuss the transfer deadline.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we talked about Atletico Madrid drawing with Espanyol. We move on to discuss the transfer world as deadline day looms. The transfer deadline is Friday for top leagues. In terms of Saudi Arabia, it's October 7th, which that's more outgoings for these sort of European clubs. But the transfer deadline will be this Friday, and there's still some moves that still need to be finalized, some things that still need to be hashed out, and that are can be very interesting to see whether or not they go through. The big ones. By the way, Lukaku, he has arrived at Napoli. He's completed medicals, and he's gonna sign a contract till 2027, which is good for him to reunite with Antonio Conte, a coach that dearly loves him, and it's a good move for him. Chelsea, they were able to get a fee for him as well. They didn't, because he's still under contract for them. So I think it's obviously the Lukaku thing was a failure for Chelsea, and it's sad, really, the amount of money spent on him, and how much we have lost in terms of him. But he's back to Real Madrid. Back to playing in Italy and Napoli. So yeah. Now going back to some of the main things that we were discussing, though. The first one I need to discuss is Ivan Toney. This is an interesting one. Ivan Toney, he's a move that a lot of top clubs, really, would have really looked at, especially, last season, early on this transfer window, which saw a little bit of Manchester United. The big ones were Arsenal, with the quality he has, proven goal scorer in the Premier League. I thought some of these top clubs in England that needed a number 9 will take a real good look at him, like a Chelsea, like a United to an extent before they signed Xerxes. Still, they could still really use a goal scorer because they don't have any goal scorer number 9s, proven goal scorers right now at United. Arsenal was a big one. I ask y'all this, to every Arsenal fan out there, in terms of chasing and battling against Manchester City, does Mikel Merino give you a better shot to pass City than Ivan Toney? With the amount of goals Ivan Toney can give you, playing in that number 9 position, a proven goal scorer, proven in the Premier League, can you really say without a shadow of a doubt Mikel Merino would get you closer to the Premier League title than Ivan Toney? I don't think so. And Mikel Merino is a really good player, don't get me wrong, and I like the qualities he presents, and I think he's a good player for Arsenal. I just think Ivan Toney is a bigger hole that they've needed to they needed to fill in. I think with the verticality that comes from his pace running in behind, he's sort of a target man, can play back to goal, can do a lot of different things, can be part of a fluid attack as well. I think he would have been a brilliant signing for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, and it would have got them that much closer to Manchester City because he is a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. and his value is going down now. With clubs, at this time and age, Arsenal, they could get him for around 35 million pounds or so, which is, give or take, a pretty similar sort of value, about 5-10 million more than what they paid for Mikel Merino. So yeah, now with Ivan Toney, it seems like the big clubs are less and less of an option. We've seen the rumors of Saudi Arabia, with Al Ali really trying to key in on Ivan Toney. But the problem with that is, bro, in my opinion, I think Ivan Toney is, at this point, 28, still in the prime of his career. He has enough to play high quality football for a top level club. Forget a club in Europe, a top level elite sort of club. He has that ability, especially in the Premier League. Again, there's not that huge market for Premier League proven goal scorers, and he is one of them. Chelsea are rumored, but with Chelsea, there's with the financial issues. They have to regulate a reasonable transfer fee and wage, and Chelsea are still working on other transfers as well. So I don't know if Chelsea is a possibility, but yeah, Chelsea is rumored that Chelsea are considering it. But for me, Ivan Toney has to stay in Europe, has to stay in the Premier League, and for me, I thought Arsenal was the best move for him, but it seems like Arsenal are not that interested on their side, which is a little shocking to me, because I think they have a real hole in terms of goal scoring, number 9, sort of X factor sort of player. Again, Osimhen, there's some rumors regarding Saudi. Now this one I don't think it's gonna happen. Osimhen being 25 years old, in the peak of prime of his career, absolute top level talent. I don't think they've arrived in Italy to talk to Osimhen and his sort of group, but I don't think Osimhen desires to go to Saudi Arabia. I know it's also been reported that Chelsea, they're in talks with Osimhen on a salary, but again, there's a huge transfer fee that Chelsea have to sort of sanction to get a guy like him. So I think it's gonna be really difficult. I think it's going to be really, really difficult for Chelsea to be able to get done, because it's a huge transfer fee, and we know what's going on at Chelsea right now in terms of having to manage their financials, the amount of money that they've spent. But it's reported that he's still sort of a priority for Chelsea, which I'm a fan of that, because I think if Chelsea could get a world-class number 9, which Osimhen in my opinion is, and a world-class goalkeeper, that propels them into the top 4 and then puts them on a good path to start competing for trophies once again. In my opinion, that's the 2 biggest holes in this team: a guy that can protect the goal and a guy that can get a goal out of nothing in Osimhen. But again, the financials with the amount of money Chelsea have spent, the financials is going to be a difficult thing. Aston Villa, they're gonna try to sign Tammy Abraham if reports say if Jean Duran ends up leaving the club before the transfer deadline. He's been heavily rumored with West Ham. There was one rumor. That's what it was. Stefan Bashketek. Barcelona are trying to hijack Stefan Bashketek move. He's sort of a holding midfielder. We know their holding midfielder yesterday towards ACL Bernal, and they want to sort of hijack his move to Red Bull Salzburg so they could potentially sign him on loan. He's a player to know and have some real quality in that sort of position. So I think that's interesting if they can get that done. But yes, guys, that's what we have for today's edition of our transfer deadline talk. As the deadline, is approaching really, really fast. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about this new Champions League format.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we talked about what is going on in the transfer world as the deadline day looms. We move on to discuss this new Champions League format and whether or not it will improve the group stages. So, first of all, before we discuss whether or not it will improve the group stages, let me try to explain to y'all and let me try to understand it myself, which I'm thinking I'm starting to do as I read it a little bit, read it a little bit more. What is this new format going to be? Now, I'm reading this off the UEFA Champions League website. So, essentially, this new format will go from, number one, it will go from 32 teams to 36 teams. And it seems like the group stages is really going to be one big league. But, with 36 teams, every team is obviously not going to play against each other. But instead, teams will, so it'll go in 36 teams. And then games will increase, going from the normal 6 home and away games. You played, in a group, it'll increase to 8 games. Each team will play 8 games. And then this new format, and to determine your 8 opponents in this sort of 36 game table, that 36 team table, 36 team league, to determine their opponents. All teams will be ranked in 4 pots. Pot 1, pot 2, pot 3, pot 4. And each team will be drawn to play against 2 opponents from each pot. So, so like, let's say, I'm representing Aston Villa. And Aston Villa, the Champions League pots came out actually. Let's see. Champions League pots did come out, so we'll be able to see what pot Aston Villa's in when I give you this example. So Aston Villa's in pot 4. Okay, so let's say I'm representing Aston Villa. Aston Villa will be drawn against 2 pot 1 teams, 2 pot 2 teams, 2 pot 3 teams, and 2 pot 4 teams. Despite Aston Villa being a pot 4 team themselves, they'll also play 2 games from their own pot to complete the 8 games that they play. Half of these games will be at home, half of them will be away, which is interesting. You don't get to, you might have to go away to Camp Nou in Barcelona, but Barcelona will not come to play at Villa Park, because, you play, you're only playing each opponent once, and half your games are home, half your games are away. So that's going to be interesting to see how, I assume one pot 1 game you play will be a home game, pot 1 game will be an away game, the other pot 2 will be a home game, the other pot 2 away game. You basically play in each pot, one of them will be a home game, one of them will be a away game. That's what I assume. That's what it's going to be. And this makes it a little bit different, makes the strategy a little bit different in terms of grouping, I think it will result into more competitive games in the group stages, especially down the stretch with 36 games, only 36 teams, only 8 games being played. The leagues will start being compressed. And yeah, so, and then, the extra 4 Champions League group stage spots will be allocated by, actually, no. Now, with this new format, it's interesting to determine how teams will be put in the knockout stage. The result of each game will decide the overall ranking in the new league, with 3 points for a win and 1 for a draw normally, right? Yeah. The top 8 sides in this league, 1 through 8 in this 36 team league, after every team's played the 8 games, the top 8 sides will qualify automatically for the round of 16, while teams from 9th place to 24th place will play in a playoff to reach the round of 16. 9th to 24th place, that's 16 teams. Those 16 teams will essentially play a home and away playoff just to get into the knockout stages, sort of an extra sort of elimination game to get into the knockout stages. Teams that finish 25th or lower will be eliminated, and they don't have any access to those teams will have no access to the Europa League. The new format with all the teams ranked together in a single league will mean that there's more to play for the way through the final night of the league phase. Now, in the knockout phase, the teams that finish between 9th and 16th will be succeeded in the knockout phase playoff draw, meaning they'll face a team placed 7th to 24 with, in principle, the return leg at home. The 8 clubs which will win, they'll move on to the knockout phase playoffs and progress to the round of 16, where they'll face one of the top 8 finishers that finish in the round of 16. Yeah, that's interesting there. So essentially, we're getting a round of it's not really a round of 32, because it's 24 teams that sort of move on to elimination games, but we essentially get an extra knockout stage round. Is sort of the playoff round to get into the knockout stages. So essentially be an extra knockout stage round, which I think will lead to more, interesting games. I think the group stages will be a lot more interesting in the fact that it's going to come down to the wire. Teams will be trying to battle getting into that top 8, maybe battle for positioning within the top 8. That'll make it easier in the long run in the Champions League, because what place you're finishing in the league, even if you're in the top 8, can determine what side of the draw you're on and all that. I think the most fascinating part about this is the fact that we'll be getting, we'll be getting Pot 1 teams facing off against Pot 1 teams. We'll get like a weekly, City's going to Real Madrid, or let me see, the Pot 1 teams, or PSG going to Bayern, or Liverpool going to Barcelona. We're going to get those sort of games because each Pot 1 team will have to play 2 Pot 1 teams. So we're bound each week we'll have, a sort of amazing game of the week. Now, reading the pots, in Pot 1, you get City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, PSG, Liverpool, Internazionale, Borussia Dortmund, RB Leipzig, Barcelona. Pot 2, you got Bayern Leverkusen, which I think it's a little ridiculous that they're Pot 2. Bayern Leverkusen, Atletico Madrid, Atalanta, Juventus, Benfica, Arsenal, Club Brugge, Shakhtar Donetsk, and AC Milan. Wow, Arsenal's a Pot 2 team. Wow. And then Pot 3, Feyenoord, Sporting, PSV Eindhoven, Dinamo Zagreb, FC Salzburg, Lille, Red Star Belgrade, Young Boys, Celtic. And then in Pot 4, Slovan Bratislava, AS Monaco, Sparta Prague, Aston Villa, Bologna, Girona, Stuttgart, and Sturm Graz and Brest. So yeah, that's gonna be the pots. And reading that Pot 1, we're gonna get some big games. Real Madrid, Man City, Bayern Munich, PSG, Liverpool, Inter, Borussia Dortmund, Leipzig, Barcelona. Not just that, we'll have teams like Arsenal, Bayern Leverkusen, Atletico Madrid. They'll also be playing 2 Pot 1 teams as well. So we're bound to get big games on a weekly sort of basis, which I think will improve the quality of the group stages. Because I have to be honest, the Champions League group stages have been a snooze fest. the past couple of years. So I'm excited for this new sort of I think it'll make it I think it'll make the Champions League group stages a lot more interesting, because they've been so boring. They've been so boring. Sometimes they've been almost unwatchable. I have no excitement looking forward to them. Maybe the first sort of week or 2 weeks, just because the Champions League is back. We're sort of excited for that, just in general, Champions League being back, getting to hear the anthem again, which, by the way, they're changing the anthem into a new anthem, which is another change with the Champions League. But I really think the quality that we're going to get in terms of quality play is going to be a lot better in the group stages, because we're going to have a lot of the big teams facing off against each other. And most importantly, it's going to come down to the wire, it's going to come down to the wire, with 36 teams being, in one league table, and you're only playing 8 games. A team can go from being comfortably in the top 8 to, suddenly, having to play a playoff just to get into the knockout stages, within one match day. That's how tight everything's going to be, a team could be in the Champions League playoff positioning at one point, and then within a match day, they'll be eliminated from the Champions League. That's how tight things are going to be. And there's really, there is a bit of room for error, but not much, especially if you're trying to get into the top 8. So that's going to be very, very fascinating to see. But yes, I do think this new Champions League format will overall definitely improve this group stage. No doubt about that. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about Federico Chiesa joining Liverpool.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed this new Champions League format. We move on to talk about, to go a little bit more in depth with Federico Chiesa joining Liverpool. Not officially, he's flying out to Liverpool on the verge of, signing the deal, his medical and all that. But, with Chiesa coming in, number one, I do think this is look, the Mamardashvi signing, their first signing Liverpool made in the Arne Slot era, let's be honest, this has potential to be a good signing as that future, goalkeeper looking past Alisson. But to be honest, we don't see him having an immediate impact at Liverpool. In fact, he probably won't even have an impact for Liverpool for the next 3-4 years, because I don't see a decline coming from Alisson. The fact he's only 31 years old, and he's 31, which is relatively not old for a goalkeeper, and you don't see a true decline in his play. So Mamardashvi, I think there's a better chance that he ends up, leaving Liverpool after a year, because he realizes, he doesn't really have a shot here, than him really making an impact at the club. He's really gonna come in to be that number 2, especially for the first year. So I don't think that's really big thing there. But with Chiesa is an interesting one. And the fact that, look, for me, this is extremely low risk and extreme high reward, because when you look at it on the surface, right, in this day and age, in this economy, the way transfers has gone, in this footballing world nowadays, 13 million euros, it's essentially nothing. That is nothing in this sort of day and age for what you see, for what players go for. It's really not. And this is a player that's suffered with injuries, has not really produced to the levels that we expected him to produce post that European Championship in 2021. Hasn't really reached those sort of heights at Juventus. But but there's still quality there. What you saw, what he was able to do at that European Championship, leading Italy to a European Championship, kind of being that talisman, him, and he fits the sort of style of Liverpool. He's a great air replacement to Salah when you look at the fact that he's very, very direct. He likes to go out players. He puts fullbacks in dangerous situations because of how direct he is. He puts them on their back foot and he puts them in a position that they have to gamble. He's very vertical. He has pace. He has a good shot on him. He has a good curler. He has a good left foot. He has a good right foot. He's ambidextrous in terms of his feet. He can shoot with both feet. I think he's going to be a very beneficial player, actually playing not just from the right-hand side, but also playing on the left-hand side. He can give you both sort of positions. He can curl a ball from each foot. And he has real speed and sort of technical ability to go at players. He reminds me of a lot of some of the more direct wingers, Nico Williams, Mohamed Salah, players like that, players that are willing to take players on. He has that sort of direct nature to him. It's just whether he can stay on the field at Liverpool, right? Where he can stay on the field. And can he, get back to those highs? Because look, if he can be a resemblance of the player that he was at a European Championship for Italy, this is beyond a bargain for Liverpool. This is beyond a bargain for Liverpool with the ability of how direct and how vertical he can be, playing in behind, the quality he has to take over games, the confidence that he plays in whenever he's playing at the high level, the sort of belief that he plays with. What I saw at the European Championship, and I know this was 3 years ago, and we can't keep going back to this when we talk about Chiesa, but what I can't stop thinking about is sort of the swagger. When you saw him play on the ball, there was a sense of confidence and belief that he was going to get past at least one man, that if you gave him any sort of room, that he was going to make you pay in terms of his ability to curl the ball in, in terms of his ability to play on the counter with his sort of positioning and his verticality. And look, at the end of the day, it's really, a no risk sort of situation for Liverpool. He doesn't work out. It's a 12 million down the drain, which is, we usually associate 12.5 million as a crazy amount of money, but when you talk about these football sort of clubs, that's really nothing for them. And Liverpool has done a good job in finding players that are valued lower than what they should be and really getting the best out of them. And I think Federico Chiesa, I think a change of scenery will do him wonders. Getting away from Juventus, getting away from that where, his confidence dropped and he wasn't really able to take the next level as expected at Juventus. Getting a fresh sort of scenery, playing for a new badge, new coach, new country, getting away from the atmosphere that has sort of been a failure in his career. I think that's gonna do good for his mental in terms of his psychological strengths to come back from what was a bad move at Juventus to sort of, if he's gonna reach the levels that he reached at the European Championship and get back to sort of to the sort of trajectory that he was on. I said trajectory that he was on post that European Championship. Then doing it at a club at Liverpool is what it is. It is is what's if he can't do it at Liverpool, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think Arne Slot will be able to balance him in there. I think that this first season, I think he's not going to be a starter or anything, but someone that can ease himself into the team. I think with Salah sort of locking on the right-hand side, I do think Chiesa could be an option, not just as the right winger and to give Salah some rest here and there, but I also think he can play on the left-hand side too, provide some depth in there to play behind Luis Diaz, someone who can, because I think he can play sort of in both positions, and I think he can be beneficial in both positions, again, because he has a good left foot and right foot, and be a good squad player for Liverpool. And also another big thing is, if he's able to sort of regain the confidence, start playing sort of player that he was, in the past, you sort of find yourself a replacement for Salah, in case Salah does not want to sign the contract and he wants to leave next season, which indication seems like that's a real possibility. If that's the case, now with a player like Chiesa, you kind of have your air replacement. Not just the fact that he's a winger, but because he does some of the similar things that Salah does. He's very direct, wants to go at his fullbacks, wants to run in behind and receive the long ball. He's a good goal scorer too. Chiesa can score goals too. Very good goal scorer. In terms of being able to assist and be really the creative force, and he's not the most creative. When he was playing sort of centrally, that was not really his game. He's not really, that sort of clever player that can pick out a pass in behind, that can be very clever in sort of tight spaces and, find the right pocket. That's not what Federico Chiesa is. Chiesa is a sort of player, you get the ball to him in space, you allow him to attack fullbacks one-on-one and make something happen, and he will make something happen. But someone that's going to be that sort of tidy, sort of clever sort of player in midfield, that's not Chiesa. Chiesa is a player you give in space and you just let him work. Like another good example is Jeremy Doku. Jeremy Doku is a great example of that. And I like players like that. Don't get me wrong. Players like that are very good players, and players like that could be needed sometimes when you're trying to break a low block and you need someone in, that can get past a man or two and open up space for teammates. It's players like that as well, and also in counter-attacking situations. So if you're playing a team that leaves a lot of space in behind and you need a player to run out defenses and run in behind, players like Chiesa can be a deadly factor in that. So yeah, Chiesa, I think it is a low risk, high reward there, and I don't think Liverpool fans, but I do think, Liverpool fans, they've not really been extremely excited in terms of the transfer window. Liverpool have always sort of been a little bit moderate in terms of their transfer spending, in terms of their transfer strategy. They don't just go out and do things, which I don't mind. I think that's good. You don't want to be like, I'm not going to name clubs, but you don't want to just throw money here and there, and sort of expect it to be a magical fix. But, you have a new manager coming in, Arne Slot. You do need to back him a little bit. For your only two signings so far to be a goalkeeper, that's really not going to have any sort of factor for this season. And then a player that's sort of not a gamble because it's a low amount of money, but a sort of a lottery sort of player, someone that you don't know what you're going to get. I think Liverpool could do a lot better in this transfer window in terms of getting players in that Arne Slot can immediately work as to improve the squad right away, to improve that starting 11 right away. Liverpool have not signed a single player that immediately goes into the starting 11. In my opinion, that's just not right. That's not how you back sort of a new manager. And it's a Liverpool team that started off really well. They've shown some really good signs. They've played some really good football. And you can see, out of all the new managers that came in, you can see Liverpool sort of adapting their style of play to the manager a lot better than some of these other teams with their new managers. So, we know that Arne Slot knows what he's doing. I just wish that Liverpool... No, I don't wish that because obviously, Liverpool is a competitor to my team. But I wish that... or Liverpool fans should wish that, he can get players in that can immediately help this team right away. And I just don't think Chiesa I still think Chiesa is a great signing for the value that you get him. I think he's a great signing, and I think Liverpool can get that. Not I think they can get that Federico Chiesa get back. They just need to nurture him. I think a change of atmosphere is gonna be beautiful for him, and I'd like to see what he does. Okay, guys, so a short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. Before the break, we talked about Chiesa joining Liverpool. We move on to react to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. And we start off in not in South America, but yeah, in South America, even though he's at Liverpool right now playing for his club. Darwin Nunez has been banned 5 games for the Copa America brawl. This is a 5-game international suspension. It was handed out by Canumble on Wednesday. Nunez was one of 5 Uruguayan players to be suspended. Not only Darwin Nunez suspended, but Rodrigo Bendincor, he was issued a 4-game suspension. Jose Jimenez, Matias Oliveira, and Ronaldo Araujo, they also received 3-game suspensions for this. And that's big thing. If y'all remember, afterwards, Marcelo Bielsa came out, not after the suspensions being announced, but after the brawl. Marcelo Bielsa came out saying, the only thing I can tell you is that the players reacted like any other human being would. If you see that there's a process to keep what's happened from happening, if you see that if what happened happens anyway, and that there's supposedly another process, an escape hatch, let's say, and both things fail, and you see your woman or your mother or a baby being attacked, what would you do? You ask whether they're going to punish the people who defended themselves. Look, I feel a great deal of compassion for especially Darwin Nunez, because he's the one that received the 5-game ban. But in the rest of them, right? Bentancur, all that. And you're defending for your family, right? You're defending your family. Your family in the stands is getting rowdy. The Canumble and the stadium organizers in Canumble and all that, they didn't do a good job enough of, separating the fans as they would do if this game was played in South America, because the American sort of, we're not really used to American sports. It doesn't really get rowdy in the stands the way it would, in a Canumble World Cup qualifying tie, or even in certain European, European, Champions League games, the sort of violence you see you don't really see that in American sports. So something that the stadium police officers weren't really expecting. And yeah, it got bad, and then players had to go in and throw punches and all that. Look, that's a bad look for everyone. The players having to go into the fans throwing punches, and it's not something that Canumble wants to really be the sort of shown out to players. Not shown out, but doesn't want it to be the face of Canumble. Oh, this is going on. This is Canumble. No, they don't want that. And it's a bad look. And they had to do something about it. I just think it was a little excessive, because they're defending their families. And again, with Marcelo Bielsa saying any human being will go out and protect their family if they see them getting abused in the stands, or even assume that they might be in danger. They're going to go out and defend them. And, I don't know, to a certain extent, maybe they deemed that the punches and the fighting was a little excessive and unnecessary. I don't know how they came to this conclusion. But yeah, it's in my opinion, a harsh suspension towards them. I do think Canumble needed to do something, because they need to send the message that this is not tolerated. They need to send the message that this will never happen again. And if you do something like this, you'll get in big trouble. And they needed to send some sort of message to get that message across, right? But you got to keep in mind too, these people, they're just defending their families, And we saw what Jose Maria Jimenez said afterwards the game as well, talking about how this has been organized and how it's been a farce and all that. But yeah, I just think the suspension is hard, and man, this is big for I can't put into words how big these sort of suspensions are for Uruguayan national team. Darwin Nunez will miss 5 games. 4 of them will be Canumble World Cup qualifying ties. These are, qualifiers going up against Paraguay, Venezuela, who had a good Copa America, Peru, Ecuador. These are huge ties that they're going to be missing. and it puts Uruguay right now, they find themselves in a position that they're not comfortable, because it's never comfortable, but they have 13 points and they're second place in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. But sort of suspension like that can completely change the deal, and with how tight CONMEBOL is across the board, that could put Uruguay in a really precarious situation going in. Now, there's a little bit more room for error with the 48-team World Cup, which gives, I believe it gives CONMEBOL around 7 spots to the World Cup, which is more than about 2 more than the last than the 32 team format. But still, at the same time, for me, that can put them in some serious situation, a dangerous situation, and something Marcelo Bielsa is going to have to handle, because it's not just Darwin Nunez. He's going to be missing Araujo, and this is Araujo. He's out for injury, so the suspension won't start until he actually returns. He's going to be able to play. Jose Jimenez, Matias Oliveira, Rodrigo Bentancur, he's a pivotal midfielder for them as well. You're going to be losing a lot of depth players too for a few games, and it's going to make that situation just even more tricky for Marcelo Bielsa to handle in my opinion, the toughest confederation to qualify for the World Cup from in CONMEBOL. And yeah, I think overall the suspensions were harsh, to say the least. I talked about Barcelona. They have made a loan offer for Bejetic. Tonali, he returned from his 10-month ban of his betting ban in the Carabao Cup against Nottingham Forest. Newcastle went on in that Carabao Cup tie to move on penalties 4-3 after Joe Willock scored literally a minute in, and then Jota Silva equalized in the 50th minute. It went to penalties, in which Newcastle were able to win. So that's a good result for Newcastle to move on. But most important thing, Tonali, he was able to play. He started, and we'll see if he's going to be involved this weekend as they take on Tottenham. Big game coming up there, by the way. Nemo Ochoa, Raul Jimenez, Chucky Lozano, they're all out of the first Mexico call-up for Javier Aguirre. They will not be involved in the squad. Mexico are playing against New Zealand in Rose Bowl, and then Canada at the AT&T Stadium, and those players will not be involved. Aguirre's list includes Santiago Jimenez, Cesar Montes, and Marcelo Flores. Edson Alvarez is not going to be in the squad because he's still regaining full fitness after recovering from the injury, and Alex Padilla, he's the sole player in this sort of squad that's representing Mexico for the first time at the senior level. The Spanish-born goalkeeper for Athletic Club, he's going to be involved. And yeah, it's a new era for Mexican football, and I'd like to see it start on their way. Then getting in a coach like Javier Aguirre that sort of has that experience, coaching the Mexican national team. And I like to see how they do. There's some serious issues with going on there with the fact that they didn't even get out of the group stages with Copa America. Same with the U.S., but the U.S. went out and got a top coach in Pochettino. Mexico, they didn't get a top coach in Javier Aguirre, but a coach that can sort of smooth it over and sort of make it a smooth transition, as eventually Rafael Marquez will take over. And we know what Rafael Marquez was doing, coaching for the Barcelona youth team. I'm interested to see how, this new Mexican national team looks. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go.
I wake up to a little bit of drool.